Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today we continue with the next part of the story of Tiểu San and hoai. After the joyful days of spring travel in Sapa, Tiểu San and hoai were preparing to return to their normal lives. The car slowly left the mountainous region while the morning mist still lingered gently over the hills. The winding road curved through slopes and valleys, gradually taking them farther away from the poetic scenery of Sapa. Through the window, Tiểu San quietly looked outside at the distant mountain ranges fading into soft shades of green, and the terraced rice fields stretching along the hillsides like long silk ribbons. Everything slowly moved away behind them, like a film gently closing one memorable chapter of their journey. Inside Tiểu San's heart, the emotions from the trip still remained vivid. The colorful flower gardens, the small winding paths leading into quiet villages, and the friendly smiles of the local people all appeared clearly in her mind. But the moment that stayed with her the most was when she and hoai helped a little girl who had gotten lost in the crowded square find her mother again. The image of the mother running toward her child, embracing her tightly with tears of relief and happiness, was something Tiểu San could not forget. Even now, remembering it still made her heart feel warm. Sitting beside her, hoai quietly turned to look at her. He noticed that Tiểu San seemed lost in her own thoughts. Her expression was calm but thoughtful, her eyes still following the scenery passing outside the window. He smiled gently. "You'll probably remember this trip for a long time, won't you?" His voice brought Tiểu San back to the present moment. She turned to look at him and nodded softly. Her eyes carried a sincere and gentle feeling. It wasn't just beautiful. It was meaningful too. Her answer was simple, but it carried deep emotion. Because that trip was not just an ordinary vacation. It was an experience that reminded them that sometimes even a small act of kindness could bring great happiness to someone else. The car continued moving along the road back to the city. The mountain scenery slowly gave way to familiar streets, rows of houses and trees lining the sidewalks. The rhythm of city life gradually appeared again, signaling that the journey was coming to an end, and that each of them would soon return to their daily responsibilities. Finally, the car slowly stopped in front of Tiểu San's small house. It was a place very familiar to her. The place she returned to every day after work. The place that held the quiet memories of her life. Tiểu San stepped out of the car first. But the moment her feet touched the ground, she suddenly froze. Her eyes stopped at the front door. The door was slightly open. The lock lay broken on the ground. A sudden sense of uneasiness rose inside her, making her heart sink for a moment. The sight before her was completely different from what she usually saw every time she returned home. She turned to hoai, her voice trembling slightly. "hoai, I think something isn't right." Hearing this, hoai quickly stepped closer. He immediately noticed the same unusual signs. The half-open door and the broken lock lying on the ground. It didn't take long for him to understand that something had happened while Tiểu San had been away. The two of them quickly stepped inside. As soon as they crossed the doorway, the scene before them made Tiểu San stand still in shock. The room that was normally tidy had become a mess. Cabinets were left open, drawers pulled out, and belongings scattered across the floor. Several items lay overturned where they had fallen. Things that Tiểu San had carefully placed before leaving were no longer in their usual places. The familiar space suddenly felt completely unfamiliar. Tiểu San stood motionless in the middle of the room. Her eyes moved slowly across every corner of the house, every cabinet, every disturbed object. In that moment, she could hardly believe what she was seeing. Her face gradually turned pale. Her voice came out softly, almost like a whisper. "My house has been robbed." Hoai quickly looked around the room to assess the situation. He knew that the most important thing now was to stay calm. Seeing that Tiểu San was still shocked, he gently reassured her. "Don't worry. We'll call the police right away." He immediately took out his phone and contacted the authorities. His voice remained steady as he explained the situation. Only a few minutes later, The police arrived at the scene. The atmosphere in the house quickly became serious. The officers began carefully inspecting each area and documenting the scene. They examined the broken door lock, the signs of forced entry, and the traces left behind inside the house. Every small detail was carefully noted, because any one of them could become an important clue. One officer gently asked Tieu San about the time she had left home for the trip, how long she had been away, and what items she remembered leaving inside the house before departing. Tieu San tried her best to stay calm as she answered each question. She recalled locking the door before leaving and the belongings she had placed inside the drawers. Now, seeing the house in such disorder, she could not help feeling both worried and saddened. Meanwhile, Hai stood quietly beside her, observing everything that was happening. From time to time, he spoke a few comforting words to reassure Tieu San. Although the house still looked chaotic after what had happened, the presence of the police and Hai's calm support helped Tieu San feel a little more secure. At least now she knew that the situation was being handled. A few days later, from the traces left inside the house and the neighborhood security cameras, the police gradually discovered an important lead. Footage recorded from a camera near the entrance of the residential area showed that late one evening, several unfamiliar young men had appeared around the area near Tieu San's house. They walked back and forth several times, looking around carefully as if they were observing something before taking action. Those recorded images helped the authorities narrow down the list of suspects. After further investigation, the police discovered that the group consisted of several young men who were drug addicts living around the nearby area. They often gathered in quiet places and had no stable jobs. When they realized that Tieu San had been away for several days and that the house appeared to be unattended, they developed bad intentions. Taking advantage of the quiet neighborhood at night, they quietly approached the house, broke the lock, and quickly searched through the rooms looking for small valuables that could easily be sold. What happened afterward matched exactly the signs left inside the house. Cabinets were forced open, belongings were scattered, and small valuable items were taken away. After collecting several objects they could sell for money, the group hurriedly left the scene before anyone could notice. However, their actions could not escape the attention of the authorities for long. From the camera footage and information gathered within the neighborhood, the police quickly identified the people involved. After only a short period of investigation, the suspects were arrested for questioning. The news was soon shared with Tieu San and Hai. When she heard that the thieves had been caught, Tieu San felt a sense of relief. Not long afterward, some of her stolen belongings were recovered and returned. Although not everything was found in its original condition, the fact that the case had been resolved quickly helped ease much of her worry. In the days that followed, Tieu San and Hai spent time cleaning and organizing the house again. Everything gradually returned to its familiar place. The scattered belongings were neatly arranged once more, and the room that had been in chaos after the burglary slowly regained its order. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the window and spread across the floor, bringing a peaceful feeling back to the house after the unsettling days. Although the incident had been resolved, Hai still had many thoughts on his mind. He understood that Tieu San living alone could sometimes involve risks that she might not be able to foresee. What had just happened felt like a reminder, making him worry even more about her safety. One quiet afternoon, after the two of them had finished tidying the house, they sat together on the small porch. The atmosphere was much calmer now. A gentle breeze passed through the yard, bringing a cool and peaceful feeling after a warm day. In front of them was the familiar little courtyard where Tieu San often took care of a few small green plants. Hai sat silently for a moment, as if thinking about something important. His eyes looked toward the yard in front of the house, but his mind was clearly weighing the words he wanted to say. Finally he spoke softly. "Tieu San, why don't you move in and live with me and my mother?" Hearing this, Tieu San looked up at him. There was a hint of surprise in her eyes, but also a calm attentiveness as she listened. Hai continued speaking, his voice slow and sincere. My house is big, and my mother likes you very much. If you stay there, it would be safer. And I would feel more at ease knowing you're not living alone. His words carried no pressure or demand. They simply reflected the concern he truly felt. After everything that had just happened, the thought of Tieu San living alone still made him uneasy. Tieu San remained silent for a few seconds. She clearly understood Hai's concern. Everything he said came from genuine care. But she also had her own thoughts about the matter. After thinking for a moment, she gently shook her head and gave him a soft smile. I know you're worried about me, but I think I should still live independently. Hai seemed a little surprised by her answer, but he continued listening quietly. Tieu San slowly looked around her small house. Her eyes moved across the familiar corners of the home. Every object, every space inside the house represented the effort she had put into building her life step by step. This is the place I worked hard to build little by little, she said softly. I want to protect it myself and take care of my own life. Her voice was not stubborn or defensive. It carried only a calm determination. For Tieu San, this small house was not just a place to live. It was a symbol of her growth and independence. She turned to look at Hai again. Her eyes were now much more peaceful than before. But that doesn't mean I'm alone, she said gently. Because I know you're always there for me. Those words warmed the quiet space between them. Hai smiled softly. He understood that Tieu San's decision was not a rejection of his care, but simply her way of protecting the life she had built. He said nothing more. He simply nodded. In that quiet moment on the small porch during the calm afternoon, both of them seemed to understand that even if each person chose their own path, their companionship would still remain, quietly, steadily, and sincerely beside each other. A few days later, from the traces left inside the house and the neighborhood camera system, the police gradually discovered an important lead. Footage recorded from a camera near the entrance of the residential area showed that late one evening, several unfamiliar young men had appeared around the area near Tieu San's house. They walked around repeatedly, observing the surroundings as if they were surveying the place before taking action. Those recorded images helped the authorities narrow down the group of suspected individuals. After further verification, the police discovered that the group consisted of several young men who were drug addicts wandering around the nearby area. They often gathered in quiet places and had no stable jobs. When they realized that Tieu San had been away for several days and that the house appeared to be unattended, they developed bad intentions. Taking advantage of the quiet neighborhood at night, they quietly approached the front door, broke the lock, and quickly searched through the house for items they could take and sell. What happened afterward matched exactly the traces left behind inside the house. Cabinets had been forced open, belongings were scattered everywhere, and small valuable items were quickly taken away. After collecting several things that could be sold for money, the group hurriedly left the scene before anyone could notice. However, their actions did not escape the attention of the authorities for long. From the camera footage and information collected within the neighborhood, the police quickly identified the people involved. Within a short time, the suspects were arrested to serve the investigation process. The news was quickly delivered to Tieu San and Hai. When she heard that the thieves had been caught, Tieu San felt a sense of relief. Not long afterward, part of the belongings that had been stolen from her were also recovered and returned. Although not everything remained intact, the fact that the case was resolved quickly helped ease much of her worry. In the days that followed, Tieu San and Hai spent time cleaning and organizing the house again. Everything gradually returned to its familiar place. The scattered belongings were neatly arranged, and the room that had once been messy after the burglary slowly became tidy again. The afternoon sunlight shone through the window, spreading across the floor and bringing a peaceful feeling after the disturbance of the past days. Even though the incident had been resolved, Hai still had many concerns in his heart. He understood that Tieu San living alone sometimes involved risks that she might not be able to foresee. What had just happened felt like a reminder that made him worry even more about her safety. One quiet afternoon, after the two of them finished tidying up the house, they sat together on the porch. The atmosphere now felt much lighter. A gentle evening breeze passed through, bringing coolness after a mild sunny day. In front of them was the familiar small yard where Tieu San often took care of a few potted plants. Hai sat quietly for a while, as if thinking about something. His eyes looked out toward the yard in front of the house, but in his mind he was considering the words he wanted to say. Finally he spoke softly. "Tieu San, maybe you should move in and live with me and my mother." Hearing that, Tieu San looked up at him. There was a hint of surprise in her eyes, but she listened very seriously. Hai continued speaking, his voice calm but sincere. "My house is spacious, and my mother likes you very much. If you stay there, it will be safer. I'll also feel more at ease knowing you're not living alone." His words carried no pressure or insistence. They were simply the expression of genuine concern from the bottom of his heart. After what had happened, the thought of Tieu San living alone still made him uneasy. Tieu San remained silent for a few seconds. She understood clearly that Hai's concern came from sincere care. But inside her heart, she also had her own thoughts. After thinking for a moment, she gently shook her head and smiled softly. "I know you're worried about me, but I think I should still be independent." Hai was slightly surprised by her answer, but he continued listening as she spoke. Tieu San slowly looked around her small house. Her eyes moved across each familiar corner. Every object, every space inside the house carried the memories of the efforts she had put into building her life step by step. "This is the place I built little by little with my own effort," she said gently. "I want to protect it myself and take care of my own life." Her voice carried no stubbornness, only calm determination. For Tieu San, this small house was not just a place to live. It was also a symbol of her growth and perseverance. She turned to look at Hai. Her eyes now seemed much more peaceful than before. "But that doesn't mean I'm alone," she said softly, "because I know you're always there beside me." Those words warmed the space between them. Hai smiled gently. He understood that Tieu San's decision was not a rejection of his care, but simply her way of preserving the life she had built. He did not say anything more. He simply nodded quietly. In that moment, in the peaceful afternoon on the small porch, both of them seemed to understand that even if each person chose their own path, their companionship would always remain there, quietly, steadily, and sincerely beside each other.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người video về câu chuyện của Tiểu San nhé mọi người. Thì ở trong video hôm nay thì Tiểu San và Hải sau chuyến du lịch ở Sapa thì trở về nhà thì vô cùng hoảng hốt khi là một điều không may đã xảy ra. Đó là căn nhà của Tiểu San thì bị trộm đột nhập và chúng tàn phá cũng như là lấy đi những đồ đạc quý giá ấy. Tiểu San và Hải thì đã báo công an và đang trong quá trình điều tra thì liệu sẽ ra sao. Thì đến cuối video thì chúng ta cũng đã biết là đã bắt được những tên trộm. Tuy nhiên thì Hải vẫn vô cùng lo lắng cho Tiểu San và muốn cô về sống chung. Tuy nhiên Tiểu San thì lại muốn ở căn nhà đó và đã trang bị thêm nhiều thiết bị an ninh cũng như là camera rồi báo chống trộm các thứ để có thể tăng khả năng an toàn hơn. Hãy đón xem những video tiếp theo ở trên kênh của mình để có thể ủng hộ cho mình cũng như là Tiểu San mọi người nhé. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại trong những video tiếp theo.